Between 1981 and 2011, NASA's space shuttles flew 135 missions. The space shuttle cameras, manned and unmanned, have recorded astounding footage of UFOs that many experts find hard to explain.
People say NASA are covering up the truth about UFOs, and when they're asked, well, where's the proof, they cite NASA's own films.
What do NASA's films really show? Explainable phenomena or something else? Join us as we investigate key space shuttle encounters that many believe show UFOs flying dangerously close to Earth. A global effort has begun. Secret files hidden from the public for decades, detailing every UFO account, are now available to the public. We are about to uncover the truth behind these classified documents. Find out what the government doesn't want you to know. Alien files, unsealed, exposing the biggest secrets on planet Earth. In 1981, NASA launches its first space shuttle, Columbia, marking a new era in space exploration.
It really kind of gave us a floating laboratory in the sky versus the older Apollo rockets that you would just strap in and essentially hope for the best. The space shuttle was a much more controlled environment for human spaceflight.
They were used to launch and to repair satellites. They were used for cutting-edge scientific research. And of course, they played a hugely pivotal role in the construction of the International Space Station.
For the first time, mankind establishes a permanent presence in space. It has been continuously occupied since the year 2000.
The space shuttle was instrumental in creating our next steps in human spaceflight, getting beyond the moon and essentially towards Mars and beyond.
2 years before the first mission to build the International Space Station, a NASA shuttle captures stunning video of what many consider to be a UFO. Unsealed case file, the Tether Incident. February 22nd, 1996, Kennedy Space Center, Florida. Space Shuttle Columbia is launched on its 19th mission. The goal is to deploy an experimental satellite system into orbit on a conducting tether.
The Tether Incident from the Space Shuttle mission STS-75 is one of the biggest conspiracy theories involving NASA.
The Space Shuttle's mission was to launch a more than 12-mile-long space tether out from the shuttle cargo bay. Now, this thing stretched for 12 miles, but it actually ended up breaking before it could extend to about a 12.8-mile length.
Strange objects were seen, and some believe that these objects were UFOs, perhaps monitoring what NASA was doing with this satellite and this tether.
This is actual live footage recorded by NASA of the STS-75 Tether Incident.
As the astronauts continued to film the tether, you saw these mysterious objects that seemed to be flying behind this focal point on the film. Now, we know for a fact that this was 12 miles long, and yet it appeared that these craft were passing behind it. Now, math can deduce that these objects were huge, and nobody could explain them.
But NASA is quick to dismiss the incident as space debris.
There's a huge amount of debris out there in space. The space tracking radars that are located at various locations on Earth track literally thousands of these pieces. Some of them just inches across, but others defunct satellites, for example.
Scientists have estimated that there are more than 20,000 objects bigger than a softball that are in orbit around Earth. They're going more than 17.5 thousand miles an hour. So you're talking about bullets going everywhere around trying to fly an airplane. That creates quite a challenge for safe human spaceflight.
I don't think people realize just how much is out there. Spanners and gloves dropped by astronauts on previous missions, bits of foam, all sorts of debris. If any of this directly impacts a satellite, it could take it out. If any of it directly impacts an astronaut, it could be fatal.
But some experts are not convinced that the objects seen in the STS-75 footage are space debris.
When you look at the evidence, the real evidence, you look at the videos, you see that a lot of times these objects appear to be intelligently controlled, that they're making right-angle turns. They're not just slowly floating off into space and then they go away. I mean, these are things that appear time and time again.
One theory is that the shuttle released large pieces of debris from its cargo bay minutes before the UFOs appeared on screen. But critics claim the space shuttle rarely sheds any debris from its cargo bay.
Once the STS-75 footage and the tether incident really came to light, people were very excited over this because I think that this was, to many, undeniable proof that there was something massive flying in space that wasn't us.
NASA effectively live streamed a lot of its missions, and so this footage was all being recorded and was getting out there, and there are a whole bunch of, I guess you would call them, space geeks who would tap into this, record it off the NASA feed, and then go back and try and analyze and interpret it, literally frame by frame.
You see these gigantic objects that appear to pass behind the tether. Doing that math, some scientists, some experts, they postulate that these objects were miles in diameter. That's not anything that we've put up there.
Up next, NASA cameras allegedly capture a UFO making an abrupt turn in Earth's upper atmosphere. Alien files unsealed. Many in the UFO community believe NASA's live feed may have captured compelling footage of UFOs in Earth's orbit. But are the objects extraterrestrial spaceships or a trick of the camera?
Many years ago, NASA decided to start broadcasting their camera feeds from space.
It's very difficult for people that really don't know anything about space photography and the way in which things look in space to really get a true handle on what's going on. The ordinary person can't judge distances, they can't judge the sizes of objects.
Those amateur researchers then would go in and start analyzing frame by frame by frame, and they made some fascinating discoveries that it wasn't just space, stars, and a few debris things hanging around outside, that it appeared to have evidence of craft being seen outside the space station or the space shuttle.
Compelling footage of what may be extraterrestrial craft has been recorded from multiple cameras mounted on the International Space Station and on the now decommissioned space shuttles.
There are fixed cameras mounted on some of the space shuttles and the rockets, for example. The astronauts, of course, themselves have handheld cameras, so they can point and shoot at specific things as situations arise.
And in many cases, astronauts are following orders from mission control.
Indeed, if you look at mission control itself, there are fixed cameras in the room recording all the time what's going on at mission control. So there's multiple levels of this. The central philosophy running through all of this is don't miss anything.
Unsealed case file, The Abrupt Turn. September 15th, 1991, Kennedy Space Center, Florida. Space Shuttle Discovery launches into orbit to deploy several satellites. It completes 81 orbits of Earth and travels over 2 million miles, surveying vast swaths of space. During the mission, one of its cameras catches an unusual sight.
As the astronauts were filming outside the window, They see multiple objects.
There are bright objects just drifting in straight lines.
Hundreds of objects that are floating all around outside of their spacecraft.
And then, something even more strange occurs.
All of a sudden in the film, you see this bright flash of light that appears to have come from the surface of Earth. And a split second later, you see one of the objects. And then you see that object make a right-angle turn. And again, that, what may be a weapon of some kind, just shoots right by the UFO.
Some experts believe the objects change direction, as if under intelligent control.
Not so, point out the skeptics. If one piece of debris hits another, as will happen from time to time just through the laws of chance, then of course there will be this change of direction.
Others are not convinced.
And so NASA tried to say, well, the flash of light you see is the shuttle thruster. And when they file the thruster, that's when you see the object make a move.
But on close inspection, some of the objects in the film are moving in multiple directions.
And so when you would fire a thruster like that, common sense tells you everything will essentially go the same way. And that's not the case with the STS-48 footage. At the end of the day, I think we may have more questions than answers.
Coming up, we investigate one of the most controversial UFO incidents NASA has ever captured on film. Alien Files Unsealed. The UFO community follows NASA's space shuttle program night and day. And over the course of 135 missions, space shuttle cameras have captured unidentified objects, turning many amateur enthusiasts into investigators.
I don't think they quite expected for amateurs to start tapping into those feeds and literally recording 24 hours a day whatever those shuttle cameras were seeing.
Unsealed case file, The Smoking Gun. November 19th, 1996, Earth's orbit. Space Shuttle Columbia is on what will become the longest shuttle mission in history, 17 days.
The STS-80 mission is something that's also excited a lot of people in the UFO community, and they refer to this sometimes as the smoking gun incident.
190 nautical miles above the Earth, Space Shuttle Columbia's cameras point toward the Earth's upper atmosphere.
During STS-80, the astronauts were filming outside of the window at a massive hurricane that had formed here on Earth. And in the process of filming this hurricane, they saw an unknown object appear seemingly out of the clouds and start moving towards the lightning in this massive storm.
And there are a series of flashes, and then there seem to be these strange objects just drifting across the field of vision.
Surrounded by what some say appears to be a plasma field, the unidentified object decelerates, hovers, and then turns and continues down across the Earth.
Now, the question is, what exactly is this object? Because you can then see what lightning looks like because it's going on at the same time. So you can rule that out.
These points of light, I mean, that some UFO believers seize upon and say are alien spacecraft, I mean, to me, this is just part of the huge amount of dust and debris that's out there.
Whatever this object was circular in nature, and it seems like it was almost attracted to what was going on inside the storm. And it's something that really lacks any explanation whatsoever.
But some experts think they may have the answer.
None of these things seem to really behave in a way that would indicate that they were under intelligent control. I mean, pretty much all these things just drift in a straight line at a constant speed.
NASA experts quickly dismiss any UFO speculation, suggesting that the thrust of Columbia's RCS jets pushed ice crystals into its wake.
NASA, in their typical fashion, wanted to explain away the STS-80 footage as simply being ice crystals.
NASA often says that many of these so-called anomalous images that show up on so many of these films are ice crystals. And this has become almost a standing joke in the UFO community that, oh, well, you know, NASA dismissing these UFOs that we see right in front of us here. Oh, more ice crystals.
But some see much more than ice crystals.
When you look at it, it looks undeniably like some type of craft or something that is much farther in the distance than an ice crystal could ever be seen at. NASA and the government and the military, they come out with these explanations that are so off-the-wall ridiculous. You can't help but think, why don't they just not address it at all? Because that would be less conspiratorial than them trying to go over the top and say, oh yes, that massive, what seems to be 12-mile in diameter spaceship is simply an ice crystal. Nothing makes sense whatsoever.
On board the Space Shuttle Columbia at the time is payload specialist and veteran astronaut Story Musgrave. Musgrave witnesses the object, stating, quote, "I don't know what it is. It appears to come from nowhere. It's really impressive."
A lot of people in the UFO community have seized on this and said, ah, well, he must know something.
Musgrave has also gone on record as saying that he does not believe that we are alone in the universe.
But I don't think he has any evidence that we're being visited. It would be kind of crazy to assume that we're alone in the universe, and that is just his belief system. If NASA really was the gatekeeper here, the guardian of this great secret about UFOs, there's no way that they'd be putting this footage out for the public to see in the first place.
Many in the UFO community believe that cameras documenting NASA's space missions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week have captured UFO activity.
There have been some cases where NASA's live feed has been cut, and I think believers and conspiracy theorists say, wait a minute, that, you know, something must have happened, and NASA didn't want the world to see.
But despite consistent denials, one such incident in January 2015 leaves more questions than answers.
In January of 2015, NASA was streaming their live feed from the International Space Station when a mysterious object appeared in the background of the shot. Now, a split moment later, all of a sudden the feed cuts. Everything goes offline. After about 5 minutes, the feed comes back, and you see in the video that this object, whatever it is now gone.
NASA also employs a standard broadcast delay on its live feed.
If something catastrophic were to happen, arguably if we look back at the space shuttle disasters, the families don't necessarily want to see that live. I think another point is there's no secret in the fact that there are classified military satellites, for example, and maybe again sometimes these broadcast delays are just to ensure that one of these secret projects isn't inadvertently exposed to the world.
But how can NASA publicly appear transparent and still maintain the highest level of secrecy?
It's safe to assume that after all these cases and sightings, all these videos that are being live fed to the world, where anybody can sit and watch them in real time as they occur, is problematic. And so they're probably broadcasting these live feeds, what they claim live feeds, but probably with a massive delay. And then that will kind of bring down the amount of evidence that investigators are collecting. Because, let's face it, the evidence is absolutely mounting up that something is going on.
Alien Files Unsealed.